Hello, and welcome to another chapter where we discuss nutrition with me, Tony Marie Gist. And this chapter, we're discussing how body composition is not a competition. So let me start by sharing my screen and we will dive a little bit deeper. And so, with this particular chapter, let's talk about our learning objectives. With our learning objectives, we want to define what is meant by a healthful body weight. We want to move forward and then outline some fad diets and why they should be scrutinized. Next, we are going to discuss energy balance as it relates to the body, reflect on how BMI or body mass index is calculated, noting it's merely a starting point. And lastly, we want to note that health is more than just a number. So, beginning with learning objective 1A, define the term healthful and discuss the term with respect to body weight. According to the World Health Organization, which is a very reputable source, they say that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, if you are having a situation where you're so focused on your body composition, where you are restricting your diet, restricting your social events, restricting your life to the point where either your mental or social well being is compromised, is that really what health is all about? If you are having a lifestyle with regard to your relationship with food, as well as your relationship with exercise, that allows you to live without major restrictions, that would be included in what we would refer to as a healthful life. So, when we talk about body weight, oftentimes this gets to be a little bit of a sensitive topic, but let's unpack where it comes from scientifically. Scientifically, body weight alone could impact your health. However, there is a wide range of body weights that is known to be very, very helpful. Unless you're extremely thin with very little muscle mass, or you are very heavy with adiposity that restricts your movement in some way, chances are if you're being physically active and eating a diet that is rich in fruits and vegetables that have lots of different colors with the addition of adequate protein, vitamins, and minerals, you're probably doing pretty good. But there are some ways that body weight could impact health. Let's talk about the bones, for example. It has been noted that increased body weight can be protective against osteoporosis. So, if you're very, very, very thin and very light and you're not carrying much mass through weight, you're not putting the appropriate pressure or stress or strain on your bones to allow for those bones to maintain a good bone density or to even increase in bone density. We want to make sure that we're continuing to lay down this adaptive bone matrix that is responsive to your needs, your physical activity, and weight that is putting pressure on those bones. So we want to make sure that we are not underweight, or else that could increase our risk of osteoporosis. We also want to understand that if we have excessive body weight beyond what we can easily move or beyond what our joints can easily carry, then this can accelerate something like osteoarthritis, which is a degenerative joint disease, meaning that it starts to become a situation where bone is on bone as the cartilage starts to break down. But most individuals are somewhere between, again, a appropriate body weight at the low end or an appropriate body weight at the high end, where we're not releasing body weight individually or alone, causing major health issues. So, what I want to do is ask you a question. Does body weight alone, or BMI, which is a height to weight ratio alone, determine if a person needs to gain or lose weight for health? And the short answer is no, no. But I do want you to take your solid foundation in nutrition, and I do want you to dive a little bit deeper and explain why or why not that is the case. So learn a little bit more as you lay a more solid foundation. Because oftentimes what people think of is like, I want to lose weight so I can fit in the dress, zip up the pants, look my best at the beach in my mind's eye, or whatever that looks like. And it starts to drive people towards things called fad diets. And these fad diets can be a little bit scary. So let's talk about what a fad diet is by definition. By definition, a fad diet is something that is going to, this is from the National Institute for Health, it's going to be something that's popular. You see it in popular press, you see it in social media. And so it's something that's gained a little bit of traction. It's also something that promises a quick fix for obesity, super fast. Okay. Does it maintain that level of health associated. I don't know. It's very confusing. With the National Institute for Health, they're also saying fad diets have appeal due to these proposed claims of helping people lose weight. But the scientific evidence varies significantly. And we can look at that scientific evidence to help us in making a decision as to what's best for us. These fad diets are often marketed with specific claims that actually defy the basic principles of biochemistry and nutritional adequacy. So ultimately, they're not in alignment with what the science is saying. So as we dive deeper into an article, again, you can use the QR code to read about this in more detail, but fad diets, like I said, they're trendy dietary patterns known to be a quick fix for long-term problems, or at least that's what they're claiming. Oftentimes they're missing food groups, they're nutritionally inadequate. They might be able to promote short-term changes, but there are major maintenance issues. And they can be very detrimental to those who have chronic diseases unless a doctor or a clinical registered dietitian is helping oversee some of these dietary changes or lifestyle changes. And they're inconsistent with respect to the scientific evidence. There might be some rapid weight loss, but it might be because caloric intake is restricted so much and food groups are restricted so much. And oftentimes there's an absence of physical activity, which means that we're not promoting what's known as best practice for health and well-being. So it's kind of concerning, but there are some 10 fad diets. So let's talk about their general premise. When we talk about the Atkins diet, ketogenic diet, Paleolithic diet, intermittent fasting, raw food diet, Whole30, South Beach diet, carnivore diet, zone diet, and even volumetrics. These are ones that oftentimes people get sucked into thinking, oh, it's the best thing ever. But let's talk about the premise of it and why it might not be the best thing ever. So when we talk about the Atkins diet, you can learn more about it by reading the Mayo Clinic article using the QR code in the lower right-hand corner. But according to the Mayo Clinic, this was developed in the 1960s by a cardiologist, not a dietitian, not someone with a nutrition background, a cardiologist. And it restricts carbohydrates in the diet itself. And it focuses the calories that people consume on proteins and fats primarily. And it also has these phases. So the first phase has, again, very low carb, and it is credited with starting this low carb trend across the board with some of these other diets that we'll be discussing soon. The first phase is the induction phase, 20 grams of net carbs. That is 80 carbohydrate calories. That is fewer carbohydrate calories than you might find in many granola bars. And we're talking about that's the whole entire day. Phase 2, you have again 12 to 15 grams of net carbs or digestible carbohydrates per day. And you might add 10 more grams of carbohydrates per day, but you up it each week. However, there's a caveat. They go, oh, if you start to gain weight, then stop increasing the carbohydrates. And I'm like, but what if you're increasing the carbohydrates with like berries, whole grains, and things that are known to have many healthful properties? Is weight alone the thing that we should be focusing on? And the answer to me is no. Hex no, double hex no. So it very much concerns me that you're starting to arrest or stop what it is that you're doing, even if it is something that might be a little more healthful, if the numbers on the scale start to creep up. Because to me, numbers on the scale are not the singular indication of health. Next, we have a ketogenic diet. And if you want to learn about ketogenic diets from Mayo Clinic, you can use this QR code as well. The ketogenic diet is high fat, moderate protein, but also low carbohydrates. It is telling you we want less than 50 grams of net carbohydrates or digestible carbohydrates per day. It's developed by a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, but it was developed for children with epilepsy. It was not developed for the general population initially. It was like, okay, maybe having too high blood sugar is going to, or having this surge of blood sugar following a meal may not be the best for those who are having certain types of epileptic events. The eating plan is similar to the Atkins diet. However, the keto diet strictly limits carbohydrates at all times. They're wanting you to be in this ketogenic state where you're actually changing your body's metabolic pathway to one that is not using carbohydrates as heavily as using fats or other energy sources. So a dietitian from Mayo Clinic shared this, quote, the keto diet is a very restrictive diet that is tough to follow. The average person is not going to keep doing this long term because the saturated fat content is high, coupled with limited amounts of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. It's not optimal for health. So I would trust a dietitian at Mayo Clinic. You can continue to do your own research. However, I do want to keep pointing you back to reputable sources and having you read more on your own using these QR codes or links. We also have a paleo diet or a Paleolithic diet, and this is based on the premise that foods that humans might eat during the Paleolithic era are the ones that we're focusing on. And this Paleolithic era dates from 2.5 million to 10,000 years ago. My question is, how long? How long? So many how longs. How long do people in that time frame live? If they have a really shortened lifespan, maybe it's not the best diet to follow for health and well-being. How long do you think you can go on a diet like this, where you are not going to be consuming any grains, any legumes, any dairy products? So if you're going out to dinner with friends, if you're visiting someone's house for a meal, if you are trying to cut the cost of your food budget, oftentimes grains, legumes, and inexpensive dairy products can be a great way to meet your body's nutritional needs that are going to be relatively inexpensive compared to some other ways. So again, how long can you do this for? I'm not challenging you. I'm just asking you to kind of think about it and how restricted this diet might be. And also the other how long is, how long did people in this time period live? Is that how long you want to live? Is that really what's best for health and well-being? You be the judge. We also have intermittent fasting, which actually makes me laugh a little bit. So intermittent fasting, it can take on various different forms, but intermittent fasting merely means you don't eat for a period of time each day or week. So some popular approaches to intermittent fasting include this alternate day fasting. You eat regular one day, like whatever you want to kind of, and then fast or have like 500 calories or less the next day, repeat. For those of you who have worked with me in tracking kind of your food intake, you'll notice you naturally go up and down with respect to the calories you consume. And if you have a day where you're consuming very little, the next day your body is going to be like, oh my gosh, where's the food? And you're probably going to eat a bunch more calories. So over the course of the week, are you really consuming fewer calories? Is this really what's best for you? Well, this is up to you to evaluate with scientific research. Another option is 5-2 ratio fasting. So you eat a regular diet 5 days a week and then fast 2 days a week. So that, again, this is going to be something that's a little less restrictive. Another one that this is the one that I think makes me laugh the most, the daily time restricted fasting. This is where you're only eating within an 8-hour period each day. For example, your breakfast might be at 7 a.m., your lunch at 11 a.m., and dinner by 3 p.m. Okay. Isn't that what my grandma used to do? She'd be like up by 5, breakfast is done by 7. She'd have lunch with her little friends by 11, and then she'd have dinner right before she went to the YMCA to do her water aerobics. My grandma did that. It served her very well. And so this is something that you might want to think about if you're able to get healthful food in these windows and make sure that you are taking care of. But again, I wouldn't necessarily go on this if you feel like it's going to restrict you socially, emotionally, if you're going to feel like it's something that isn't going to allow for your holistic health to be considered. Then we also have a raw food diet. Again, learn about this raw food diet using the Cleveland Clinic QR code above, reputable source on the topic. Overall, this raw food diet is talking about uncooked, unprocessed foods. So you're not able to cook your meats if you're an omnivore. You're not able to go to the store and just grab a loaf of bread or a snack that's in like a little snack pack. You can't have roasted nuts because those are all not part of this raw food diet. There are some concerns that individuals have with regard to food safety on this diet. Also, again, how sustainable is it if you're wanting to have a relationship with food that includes other individuals? Because you are allowed to blend, you're allowed to dry at low temperatures, low temperature drying. You're allowed to juice, you're allowed to soak, you're allowed to sprout, but you can't cook roast or do other things that might, again, denature a protein that is in that foodstuff itself. So definitely something that would be difficult for me to maintain as an omnivore while observing food safety. We also have Whole30. And I chose this little sign here that said nope, because the Whole30 requires like temporary bye-byes to some everyday food items. And I used the quotes from this Cleveland Clinic article, where they say dairy, gone, grains such as wheat, corn, rice, and oats, out of here. Legumes like beans, peanuts, and soy, see ya. Sugar and artificial sweeteners, toodles. Alcohol, later. And this elimination diet calls for giving up all of those food items in all forms for 30 days before slowly reintroducing them. It's designed to serve as kind of like a reset for your body, but it is a very challenging one. And to me, my thought is if you're realizing you have a hard time with over consuming, we'll say alcohol or a lot of cheese, like dairy. And those are things after you've stepped back and looked at your dietary choices that aren't setting you up for the best health and well-being, then maybe take out just like alcohol. You don't need alcohol, or take out dairy and just make sure you're getting enough calcium, vitamin D, and other protein that would be in your dairy products, but get it from other foodstuffs. Rather than just completely eliminating so much. Again, I feel like this would be really restrictive for a full month and then potentially really restrictive even longer, depending upon how much you string it out. If you have allergies, if you have major issues with your gut or your intestine, maybe this is something to try for you to pinpoint with the help of a clinical registered dietitian and a doctor and their recommendation to potentially do something like this. But for a regular traditional individual who is not struggling with these health issues, maybe consider like, what does that look like for 30 days? We also have something like the South Beach diet. So like meal prepping for the most part, with this particular caveat where the purpose of the South Beach diet is to change the overall balance of foods you eat and trying to encourage a healthy lifestyle. The thing that I do like about the South Beach diet is it does include exercise, which I feel like if you're going to be consuming enough calories to support exercise and you're including exercise in a plan, it makes me happier. If you're someone who's like, hey, I might consider this, you might consider it if you enjoy the types and amounts of food that are featured. They're very restrictive as far as like how much of each thing you're supposed to have. It's very formulaic. If you want a diet that does restrict certain carbohydrates and certain fats, and you're willing to go down that route, then maybe this might be something to talk to someone about. If you want to change your overall eating habits, and you want a diet that you might be able to stick to for life, this might be an option for you. This is one that I would say it's still a fad diet. It's still one you've got to look into. It's still one I would say is not as healthful as something like the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate. Love that one. Mediterranean diet. Love it. This one here is still a little bit more restrictive than those types of things. And that's why it still falls in the category definitely of a fad diet. Another fad diet, the carnivore diet. This is the newest trend. And again, according to Mayo Clinic, it goes against almost all nutrition guidelines by eliminating almost all foods. And while a short-term elimination challenge may help some people identify some gastrointestinal triggers, there are more appropriate and sustainable strategies out there. So this is quoted from the article. You can again use the QR code to read about it. Kind of interesting that some individuals are really diving deep into this. And let's round up to number 9, the zone diet. And the zone diet is saying like, you stay in the zone, and staying in the zone requires you to stick to the rules. So you've got to eat a meal within an hour of walking. Never let more than 5 hours go without eating, and have a snack before bedtime. So they're kind of doing the opposite of, like, you're noticing there's contradictory information when you're talking about, oh, this is helpful, this is not. There's some people are like, yes, you must have a snack before you go to bed. And then the intermittent fasting, like, never have a snack before bed. So it's just very interesting to see the differences when we look at them. With the zone diet, it breaks down protein, carbs, and fat into blocks that correspond to the amount of each you can have at each meal and snack. So you can't have a situation where you're like, I'm going to have this really big high protein lunch with so much protein, and then have all carbs for dinner. They're like, nope, You have 11 to 14 blocks per day, and you have to follow the formula. To me, that's going to be exhausting. I don't have the energy for that. It sounds exhausting before I even look into it further, but that's what some people like to do. There's the Zone diet. And as we continue on, and if you want to read more, WebMD has more information about this. We also have volumetrics. And volumetrics is a type of eating plan that has you consume very low energy density foods. So very low calories per gram or per bite, and high nutrient density foods. So really focusing in on having like, again, lots of leafy greens, lots of berries, things like that, that have the low energy density and high nutrient density. However, it does not encourage things like salmon that have, and nuts that have a lot of beneficial calories associated with them. And so those would not be as easily embraced in this volumetrics diet. So why should we scrutinize fad diets? After we've looked at some of them, they often promise results beyond what is safe. You're noticing that most of them are restrictive in one way or another. They rarely include a permanent lifestyle change. They're merely a temporary choice. They're often associated with nutrition concerns such as inadequate vitamin, mineral, or calorie intakes. So these are the reasons why I think maybe look away, don't pay attention to those fad diets. So how about if we're wanting to better understand our food, our body composition, energy we take in, energy we burn? What is it that we need to understand? Well, what is another term for energy to begin with? And what is another word for it on a food label? So energy, by definition, is simply the capacity to do work. And when we take in food, we can take that food and we consume macronutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids or fats that contain calories in them. So these calories on the nutrition facts panel are another term for energy. We can use them to move or do other work, such as reconstructive work at the cellular level. We can store extra calories if we overconsume them, and then we can draw from those stores in times of need where we don't have enough calories. So those calories are merely chemical energy that we can take from our food and then use in various different ways. And you might say, okay, what's the energy currency of the cell? What is it that they're using these carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins for? And how is that energy produced? Very simply put, we're going to just one simple slide on this. ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is what we call the energy currency of the cell. It's almost like, again, if you're using your credit card, you can pay almost anywhere in the globe with a credit card. So the adenosine triphosphate can be used in any cell of your body whatsoever. And how we get that adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is we take those macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the lipids, and the proteins, and we convert them to ATP. And where we do that is we do that inside of our cells. It's most efficient when oxygen is present, and the majority of the ATP is actually produced with the assistance of these tiny little powerhouses of the cells. We call them the mitochondria. And the more we exercise, the more mitochondria we have inside of our cells. The more we exercise, the more enzymes that our mitochondria can have to pack a punch and make more ATP. And this is why individuals, or yourself, you may notice the more you exercise, it's almost like the more effective your body is at getting energy, having energy, feeling energetic, because at the cellular level, deep down in there, those little mitochondria actually adapt, change in response to your physical activity, and making sure it has the macronutrients it needs to do what it wants to do, which is produce energy. And so when we're talking about energy, what ways do we take in energy? Like we said, calories are going to be kind of the way that we're going to define how much energy that you might have in a foodstuff. And so foods, drinks, or supplements that contain macronutrients or calories are going to have them. So lipids or fats contain 9 calories per gram. Digestible carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram, and proteins contain 4 calories per gram. But we cannot forget about the fact that alcohol also has calories. So 100% pure grain alcohol, something similar to or akin to Everclear, would have 7 calories per gram. Definitely packs a punch. And so if you're someone who is just now turning 21 and you're deciding to have alcohol for the first time, and all of a sudden you are gaining weight and it doesn't look like it's healthy muscle tissue, and it doesn't look like it's something that would benefit you, and you step back and you realize, well, I'm not consuming any more food. It might be calories from the alcohol. You might want to reconsider whether that's what's in your best interest or not. If you're talking about ways that you can burn energy, I encourage you to read about this through Ace Fitness, which is a reputable source in exercise. And they and other reputable sources say that over 50% of our calories are going to be burned through basal metabolic activities, or the basal metabolic rate. Oftentimes it's between 60 and 75% of our overall calories. And these are the calories needed to have our heartbeat, to have us breathe, to just exist and have 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit as our body temperature. So the amount of energy it takes for you just to exist, if you were laying on a couch watching TV doing nothing at all, would be your basal metabolic rate. We also have the thermic effect of physical activity, or TEPA, and that can be subdivided into the exercise activity thermogenesis as well as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. So between 15 and 30% of your overall calories can come from physical activity, whether it be just you having the NEAT movements, like standing from a chair. Like if I go, oh, standing up from a chair, then that takes calories, but I don't want to really consider that exercise. Fidgeting, so me just kind of moving around, me speaking, or if I were to sing, then that would be non-exercise activities of thermogenesis. But then if I were to go, I'm going to pick up my gym bag and I'm going to go out for a run and then lift weights, that would be exercise activity thermogenesis. So these two things both fall in the category of that TEPA. And then we have the thermic effect of food. If you're eating food, and if you have these high fiber foods that are very healthy and need processing, you can have upwards around 10% of your daily calories being burned from just eating and digesting food. Kind of crazy. So yes, the ratios may not, you might go, wait a second, how do all these things add up? It varies from person to person. Just again, basal metabolic rate is going to be more than half of your calories. Up to 30% or so can be from movement. And again, up to 10% or so can be from the thermic effect of food. And you might wonder, if you overconsume calories, let's say we are consuming more calories than we're burning, and what ways does our body store those excess energy? Well, extra carbohydrates can be stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles for later use, and extra calories from any source can be packed on as adipose tissue, and we can use that for later use as well. If you think back to the video that I highlighted in external sources, or again, in the description of this particular video, there is fantastic information talking about how not basal metabolic rate, that's BMR, but body mass index, the height to weight ratio is calculated. It is literally just a height to weight ratio. It is a starting point. It is not the end all be all. There's so many confounding factors to think about. So what I want you to do is take the book that you have, fill out the book using the video quiz information and the video that's highlighted there. And if you do have questions, reach out to me. My door is always open. Additionally, as we moved into objective 5, we want you to note that health is more than just a number. I also want you to take reputable sources in this field, and I want you to use the information from the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, discussing the leading causes of death in the most recent years. And then I want you to step back and think about the questions that we have posed, meaning, okay, how much of these leading causes of death, how much of them are associated with body composition or not? How much of them are associated with physical activity or not? Or even proper nutrition or not? So think about that. And what I want you to do is empower yourself as you learn how to effectively interpret information from reputable sources as we finish this semester strong. And my goal for you and all of this is just think about your health. Really think about your health. Make healthful choices. Health is not a one-size-fits-all situation. It is definitely individual to you, And hopefully now at the end of this journey where you've listened to all the different lectures and you've taken notes in the book, you now feel like you can make choices that are going to best impact you. So let me know if you have any questions. Like I've always said, my door's open to you.